because I came in all excited.
I still got it, it's still
We're finishing
a quarter of the way full, so we emptied out. And now we're trying to.
Well, a question for you, just. I noticed.
I was hoping to be done last week, but,
Just
Make sure that we get a motion.
yeah.
Do we have Dave Knudsen online?
Nope.
All right, well, until somebody else shows up, we don't have a quorum and we can't do this.
So we text them. Dave out of town.
Yeah, he said he was gonna attend virtually. So until Suzanne shows up or Dave shows up or Steve shows up.
It's on work at 4:30, so she should be.
She'll be here.
Okay. And Steve,
I don't have Steve's number.
I do. Hold on.
I have days.
Okay.
Well, he's not here, right? Dave.
No, he's out of town. He said he was gonna attend remotely. And yeah, Sam's calling Steve.
No, I'm calling Dave.
Oh,
He's out of town, so.
I'm texting.
Oh, let's see if he's there.
Because if we don't get.
How was your daughter's birthday?
It was great,
How's she doing at school?
very good. So they're all doing really good. So, we got her she wanted, birthday cake, but it was a Zax's cheesecake, because that's her favorite. So we went to Zax's and Hotchkiss, grabbed a cheesecake. Yeah.
But I know it was hard for her to move because she just had a new boyfriend.
Oh, you're the older daughter. That's the older.
Different one.
Oh, there's Dave.
How's she
It's now, so we have pretty she's looking.
liking school?
She joined FFA, Future Business Leaders of America, and everything. So she's doing great. Dave, you're muted.
Yeah, I had to click got it before I came in. Thanks, Steph.
Steve, we're in a planning commission meeting and I was hoping you would show up. Anyhow, this is Mary Beckring. Any minute now would be really good. Take care.
It's only 2 minutes after. Not too bad.
Well, Suzanne has to come from Somerset, so.
Yeah.
We'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started.
So that was today.
Okay,
Yes,
all
that
right.
makes sense.
Okay, good.
There you go. There'll be a whole bunch of issues.
Okay, you want me to forward this to you?
Yeah, if I'm not included, then.
You are not. Oh, here we go. All right, Suzanne. Come have a seat and we're gonna go ahead and get started. Okay.
Oh, I think I got one.
Well, okay.
Someone gave it to me. Is this the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, I'm gonna call this meeting to order. Let's all stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Santiago, can we please have a roll call?
Knudsen.
Here,
Vice Chair Bachran,
Present. What? Okay.
Commissioner Quisette, Commissioner Watson,
Present.
Secretary Howe.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum and everything continues. Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
Make a
move to
motion.
approve the agenda.
Okay.
Oh, second.
We had a motion and a second. This motion
Yeah.
came.
Yep, that's good.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Where were the minutes?
They were in the pack.
I guess I thought I had the packet here, but I guess I didn't see the minutes.
Okay.
The minutes were super, super short. It was like one paragraph,
Yeah.
right at the beginning of the packet.
Was there more information in the packet I should have been aware of?
It
Because
is,
I looked at it, but I thought this was all.
no, it has the minutes in.
But it didn't have any synopses of what we're doing tonight or anything.
It had the front page with the.
The agenda.
Yeah, the agenda and then the minutes. Yeah. Get a motion to accept the,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
we have a second on that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right, next up on the agenda is, there are no actions and presentations, so it's the public hearing on consideration of approval of recommendation to the Board of Trustees to adopt the Housing Needs Assessment Action Plan. So I'm going to, so in case you didn't notice, Trustee Knudsen is actually the chairman of this committee, and I'm acting in his stead as vice chairman because he is out of town. So I'm going to open the hearing. And how this is going to work is our town administrator, Mr. Nguyen, is going to introduce the item and give us a background, and then our applicants are going to do a short presentation. Then we're going to accept public comment. Then the applicants are going to give rebuttal to that, if they so desire, or if they have any rebuttal to that. Then we'll ask questions. There will be a final call for questions from the board, and then we'll close the public hearing, and then the board will discuss it. Now, during the public comment portion of the hearing, members of the public attending in person and desiring to speak should approach the lectern. Those participating online should use the raise hand function and wait until the town clerk calls their name before unmuting their lines to speak. Members of the public may speak for 3 minutes each. Direct your comments to the chair, not the applicant, and please state your full name and address for the record. Yes, Ms. Watson?
I would like to, I mean, I don't know how many people would like to speak, but we don't have that many people in the public right now. And I think 5 minutes, I think we should increase the time to 5 minutes. 3 minutes is not a lot of time for this much information. And I don't know why we have to be that stingy. I mean, if it doesn't look like we have that much public in attendance. I'd like to hear more. I'd like to not have people feel.
All right, how does the rest of the commission feel?
I'd agree with them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that also.
Okay, all right, then we will make it 5 minutes.
Okay, so can we have a motion in a second and go through a proper
I'll make a
change?
motion to change it from 3 minutes to 5 minutes.
Okay, you have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that motion passes. 5 minutes it is. All right. Okay, then after. See, I will put, that's it. Well, after the. We'll close the hearing after. All right, after the public comments and questions, after the applicant rebuttal. And any final questions from the board, then I will close the hearing. And no more discussion or questions from the public or the applicant will be taken. The board may ask advice. Well, we don't have a town attorney present, so that doesn't matter.
So this is
Yeah.
Madam Vice Chair, this is a little bit different. This isn't a quasi judicial hearing like these bodies typically hear. This isn't like a variance from the code or some sort of request for interpretation of code. This is a public hearing for a housing needs assessment that has been produced by our consultant, who is, been hired by the town. So it's really more information gathering. And so we're kind of following that general format, just so that we also get enough public input while we're discussing this housing needs assessment. Do you mind if I kind of give the introduction to what we're doing?
That would be fine.
Okay.
So I am opening the hearing with your introduction.
Sure. So this process has been going for a good part of the year. There's been a lot of public input from different open houses, and then a housing task force was established, made up of residents, business owners, board trustees, and commission members that worked through drafts as they were being presented by our consulting team. These drafts have also been made available on our website, so the town's website. Through a banner up top, you can easily access it and see those drafts as they were being produced. And tonight, we're talking about a recommendation either, so there's going to be three options for a recommendation for this housing needs assessment action plan. The Plan Commission can either recommend approval with edits or without edits. They can recommend denial, or they can punt. They can say, we're gonna defer a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. So tonight, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at one of those three options. To be clear, this is a housing needs assessment and action plan. Part of this housing needs assessment will be utilized as an element of the master plan. Now, this doesn't mean that you approve something tonight and the master plan is completely approved and this section can never be changed. It's not true. The truth is, we've also got our master plan or the comprehensive plan process going as well. And these sections will be added to our master plan for consideration. And that's a document that you have yet to see, but it's coming to the Plan Commission. It's one of the most important documents that you guys produce and you consider. So that's coming. There have been some questions on whether or not adopting this, and I think you all received an email just before this meeting with concerns that by adopting a housing needs assessment and an action plan, that this is somehow circumvents the current water moratorium that's in place. And the truth is that it's not possible, right? In order to add any new additional taps or to add any extension of service lines, certain criteria have to be met within that water moratorium to allow for that to happen. There were some concerns that additional water taps or water extension has gone on. And since I've been here in July, I've written quite a few certified letters and emails to different people requesting water taps to say, you can't do it, we're in a water moratorium. The most recent one was Monday, October 30th, in which I told somebody that they cannot extend water service to an ADU on their property. We're in a current water moratorium. So this housing needs assessment doesn't have any bearing on the water moratorium that's in place. Our water moratorium has criteria that have to be met in order for us to lift it to have any growth. What we're doing is we're getting ourselves ready. Think of it like golf. We're teeing it up so that we're ready to go once the moratorium is lifted to allow for smart growth, not just rampant growth, but smart, calculated growth. And that's the whole point of a housing needs assessment. That's the whole point of a master plan, is to make sure that we have planned and have gotten ready for what's coming. And with that, our consultants are here to talk about the work that they have done to put this together. I think they've done quite a lot. And this housing task force, from the two meetings that I buzzed through, they were very active in participating with what was going on. So, Madam Vice Chair, if I may, Shay and Andrew are here from Urban Rural Continuum.
Shay and Andrew, would you please come and give us your presentation?
Thanks for having us, you guys. So I'm Shay. This is Andrew. We together are Urban Rural Continuum. Do you want me to sign in? Is that helpful for a?
Would that be helpful? Yeah, okay.
Give me 1 second so I don't try to do things twice.
It helps with spelling.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, so write legibly so that when Ruben tries to put this in the minutes, he can get the spelling correct.
Okay, perfect. So we have been mostly your consulting team for this project. We have been assisted a bit by AIRS, who's kind of been in the background, but they've participated with us as well. So the idea for this project, and I'm sorry, I am sharing probably more than a lot of you, or stuff you guys already know, but it's helpful for, I think, some faces I haven't quite seen yet throughout this project. So if I'm repeating things you know, I apologize. But the idea for this project really seemed to start last June. So 2022, the town hosted a strategic planning session. Affordable housing came up as one of the top priorities. So this project in particular was kind of formed. The town wrote a grant, figured out what they wanted to do, published an RFP, and we were awarded the project, which was very exciting for us. We are just outside of Hotchkiss, so really fun to be able to work locally and in our kind of own community here. We kicked off the project in April, so it has been better part of the year working on this project. We're really excited to be where we are, having had a ton of community input, a ton of different conversations with the community, and have a document ready to be adopted, if you guys are ready for that. I also mentioned to the mayor before we started, I was all excited, and then I thought, oh, but we're wrapping up soon. But it's been really fun, so thank you guys for having us. Let's see, the scope of this project was really two parts: a housing needs assessment and a housing action plan. So a housing needs assessment is really where you use a lot of data and you identify the housing issues and needs in the community. So you'll notice in the first part of the project, there is a lot of data, a lot of graphs, a lot of charts. That's where Andrew shines. And it really helps frame all of the issues going on in the community, not with just anecdotal information of I heard this and I heard that, but actually really tries to look at a lot of good data and put that on paper. And then the action plan is, well, what are we going to do about this? What do we as a community want to do about it? There's a lot of different things you can do to address housing, but what would work here? What feels good here to the community? What's practical here? As Stefan mentioned, this is basically serving as the housing element to the town's comprehensive plan. So that housing topic specifically was kind of pulled out of that master plan or comprehensive plan effort. And that's what this project was to do, really digging deep on housing since it's such a priority of the town. That's kind of why we're doing this tonight with the Planning Commission formally as an element of a comprehensive plan. State statute has us go through a public hearing, make sure the public can be heard. But we've had a lot of public comment. We spent a decent amount of the budget for this whole project on public comment and public participation. So I am going to go through that just because I find it's really helpful to think about everything that went into what we're looking at tonight. We did have a task force. They were amazing. So thank you to our members of our task force that are here tonight and everybody else who's not. They really helped inform and kind of guide the project. There were 12 members on that who were mostly all present at almost all of our meetings. We did an employer survey that we did a lot of outreach for to try to get people to respond to. We got about 50 local employers to respond, which represented about 500 local employees, that's pretty significant in a town of this size. We conducted interviews with realtors, property managers, builders, and social service organizations. We had an open house that we publicized widely, and some familiar faces in the room tonight were there at that meeting. We had 37 attendees that really provided a lot of thoughtful detail. Hung out, it was a 3-hour event, and there were many people who were there for at least 2 hours, really participating, asking questions, reading everything, talking with others. We also did targeted outreach where we tried to show up to other organizations' meetings. We went to a coffee clash, we went to a couple of different churches, a handful of other things. We got about 36 other community members doing that. We've reviewed the first part of the document, the needs assessment and the housing action plan with the town board at different public meetings where we accepted public comment either verbally or in writing. Let's see, we maintained a project website throughout this whole project, and thank you to Ruben for being our liaison and making all those updates. There was a link on the website where people could fill out comments, give us input at any time. We got a few comments there, not a lot. We posted the monthly board updates there and in packets. Other drafts were online, like Stefan said, other drafts were posted as they were available. And then we also read a lot of other plans and studies, past plans and studies that the town has adopted, approved, had done to inform this effort. So that's a lot. That's a lot of effort and energy and community input that went into this. Now, is that to say that someone won't show up in 3 months and say, I never heard of this project? No, that always happens. It's impossible to get everyone to know what's going on in the town all at once, but there was a lot of participation, which kudos to you guys for budgeting appropriately to really include the community and try to have that participation. So a quick overview of the document, and I'm not going to go into it a ton, but there is an executive summary, and we tried to make that a little bit more fun, pretty high level. It's 5 pages, and if someone is going to read anything, they can read that. It frames out the issues, it frames out a little of the process, and some of the actions to take. Beyond that is really the meat of the project, and there is an introduction that kind of frames both sections of the document. And then there's a housing needs assessment and the housing action plan. And then, of course, there's an appendix, so some extra information, the notes from the open house. Most importantly, there's a housing resources document in there that we put together throughout this process. There are copies here in case anybody wants one of those, and it's on the website. But that lists your existing public housing resources that already exist here through organizations out of Junction or Delta or somewhere else. So the housing needs assessment is a ton of data and a ton of information. It does frame all of those issues, and it's really helpful to think through and understand before you talk about solutions. We had a couple of comments during the open house of, wow, it was really helpful to see the issues before we started working on solutions. It's easy to jump to solutions, or I heard that community did this and it worked there. Well, they might have a whole different set of issues than you guys have. So that's kind of the purpose of this needs assessment, is to frame all of those issues. And then also it will be really helpful as a resource for anybody looking to build, develop, provide housing resources to your community, you know, what income levels need what kind of assistance. So that's something hopefully you guys can point different people, different organizations, people to now and in the future. And then part 2 of this document is really the action plan. So that's where the rubber hits the road a little bit, and it's the what do we do about it. This document really is framed about what the town can do from kind of the town's perspective. There's a lot that other people can do, other organizations, Delta Housing Authority, Habitat for Humanity, Delta, they also are in the housing game and can do a lot of stuff, but this document is really trying to frame what the town can do. Let's see, it is a plan. So I think Stephanie kind of mentioned this. It's not saying that you will do X, Y, and Z, that you will build something or that you're extending taps anywhere. That is not what this plan is. It's a plan of steps forward. What can we do to start addressing housing issues? What steps can we take? What did the community support as the first things to do, the things to do a little bit later, and maybe things to consider at another time? That's not to say that as issues arise or potential funding arises or an opportunity arises that you can't prioritize those actions. But it is a general idea that, hey, we are agreeing with the general steps of this plan and we are hopeful to work towards those. It's also not super specific because as you implement, that's where you guys are going to have to figure out the details of the plan. You know, if like the top recommendation is to regulate short-term rentals, that came up over and over and over again. Well, you're gonna have to figure out exactly how to do that through the process that would typically happen with public input. So just remember, there's not a silver bullet. to solve all housing issues. There's no one organization that can solve all housing issues, and we try to keep that in there. We also really tried to emphasize that the community was pretty passionate about do something. I think, you know, it's very common that communities can get stuck in analysis paralysis and just keep talking about it until they think they're going to get it perfect. And it's very hard to get to perfect. So do something, approach it, do it the best you can, making the best decision with the best information you have, and you can always tweak it later. You can change something, you can adjust, you can change a rule. It takes some process, but it's possible. There were some recurring themes during the project that just came up over and over again. And those, I think, it can kind of be your like guiding principles as you guys implement this plan. Focusing on locals was really important to the community, maintaining the community character, leveraging the town's capacity, like being realistic with the town's size and ability and budget, all of that. And then using the water tap moratorium as an opportunity to plan and prepare. So Stefan also mentioned that as well. You know, you could sit and do nothing until you figure out the water tap moratorium, but then it will be a frantic rush of, oh my gosh, now what do we do? And that is not good planning. So this is trying to get the ducks in a row to sort everything out, to be organized, have the policies in place, so that whenever the time is right to lift that water tap moratorium, that you're prepared for that. There's 3 different categories of actions in the action plan: start now, start next, and start in the future. Those start now are obviously the ones that raised to the top of everyone's priority list. The top 2 are the implementing some short-term rental regulations and allowing for accessory dwelling units. Those came up just very often. They're also conveniently somewhat easier for the town to implement without a ton of resources. Some of these other items can take a lot of town resources. As a side note, we will be delivering a first draft of code edits to address short-term rentals, accessory dwelling units, allowing for small units, and an expedited review process for affordable housing projects. That's kind of a add-on to our contract here. So that will be delivered with our final deliverables, but that will be for you guys to then take through your regular process and decide how you want to do it. But that first draft is informed by the public, by all of this outreach we've done throughout this project. So hopefully that gives you a really good start to get into it. There's a few other items in the plan, including a full municipal code audit. So ideas for what the town could change in the code to remove any barriers to affordable housing. And there's also some information for a potential development if the town ever wants to go that direction and work on a potential development. So again, I think tonight we're just here to talk about the plan, get some public comment. We're happy to answer any questions you guys have and are looking forward to your recommendations. So thanks for having us and happy to answer any questions before we carry on.
Okay. So I think what we're going to do though is we're going to go to public comment, and then we'll have the board present questions for you.
So I do want to have one clarifying comment. So what's coming next, you know, these policy recommendations for regulating short-term rentals and ADUs, there's still a moratorium in place. And so we can have this new ordinance in place being ready, but you don't just forget about your other ordinances. We can't. So even though there may be a new policy update that says we're going to regulate short-term rentals and we're going to allow for accessory dwelling units, that can only happen if the moratorium has been lifted. And so, you know, they're not, the one is the ADU and short-term rental is dependent upon the water moratorium. So I want to be clear on that. It's not like this policy gets implemented and we say, forget all of every other law that we have in the town. You can build whatever you want to. That's not going to happen.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to open it up to public comment. Please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and write your name down so that Ruben can get it correct in a minute. And you have 5 minutes, and we have a little timer there. And it will go off when you have, it'll turn to yellow when you have 45 seconds left. So you have a good judge of how much time you have left. All right. Who would like to make a comment? Yes.
My name is Mary DeFranco. I served on the task force with Kay and Andrew, who are wonderful, highly recommend them anything that the town wants to do. Just a couple ideas that have come through my mind since going through all of this with them. One is, should the water tap rates for short-term rentals be the commercial rate rather than a residential rate? Since the people who have lodging in town are all paying commercial rates and other people are paying commercial rates, it feels like that would only be fair. Plus, they should be paying the sales tax that everybody pays. So once this is regulated, the short-term rentals, this would be something I think would be a very fair thing because they are running a business. So another thought I had is the coal mine has their 300 taps, I think, that they're holding until the mine shuts down. And they needed these taps in case there was any emergency water issues because of the mining, that the taps would be available for use in the town. And when this last coal mine closes down, which they have coal for the next 5 to 10 years, and they'll be closing down, these taps will then be available. And one of the things I thought might be a good strategy for the town is if somehow they were able to give the coal mine a donation, because these taps could go for affordable housing and it wouldn't probably cost the town anything. It's just, it would be a way if the town said, okay, you don't have to use these taps on your property, which I think is what is required right now for these, that we can take this many taps, we'll give you a donation because they're making a lot of money and tax write-offs probably are a high priority. So that was one of my thoughts when they come up. And as Bobby Reedy said, when the coal mine does close, that will open up more housing in town. So it's kind of going to be in the same time frame, maybe when the water moratorium lifts. So it would be something the town could start planning and strategizing with. The other thing I would highly recommend is prioritizing these taps when they do become available so that they do go to what will keep this town rather than making a second home. What I've noticed is a lot of times when developments go in, the people that get the developments, I mean, the housing are people that have the whereabouts about how to do things. And the people that really need to be in the low income housing are the ones that have no idea how you fill out all these forms and that you're on top of it because they're busy working. And so you end up with people in the units that aren't really here but that much. They can have the unit, they keep it at a low price. So I think putting in that they have to work so many hours in the town or some kind of a limit like that, I think would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good time.
Okay, who else would like to address the board? Yeah.
It's so very family. And yeah, there's probably some gems in this that are going to be a positive thing to consider. There's also a lot going on here that should be called out and stopped pretty short. Like, for example, this hearing, I don't think there's any legal underpinning for this as a public hearing. The fact that this is going to the board for adoption as a part of the master plan, there's no legal underpinning for sending a master plan to the board. It's entirely the property of the planning commission. And the planning commission has got legal duties that are set out really plainly in statute. They're just totally ignored. Nobody except Member Watson really has any awareness of it this way. It seems like, for one thing, you can't have an ex officio member as your chairman. It's laughable. The secrecy of the meetings or the surveys to the businesses, they've been illegally denied to a Cora request. It's clear in the contract for this that that's all town property, and it's just so icky and closed and so pushed by certain interests here that it's uncomfortable. The idea of the town taking a role, a financial role or a guiding role in any kind of housing venture just gives me the chills. This town absolutely does not have the ability, the knowledge, or the integrity to be involved in a housing scheme. And if it actually starts to come to that, there'll be some real hard pushback. It's fine to target your process and talk about it and get all excited about it, but it's a nutty idea. This town just has never made any action, carried through anything well enough to think of the town getting involved in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of buy-in to any kind of housing scheme. And the whole thrust of this thing, the way it reads to me, is it's to get workers for the businesses. And so you're talking about subsidizing the businesses with low-income housing to get people that can work in retail and clean toilets. And this turns the traditional model of business and finance on its head, because it's the business district that provides the taxes that support the town, not the town takes public money and supports the business at the expense of the residents. I mean, it's unfathomable to me that we're even talking about this stuff in this town at this time. As far as when the ARCO taps come online, get ready. This town has so much got its pants down. Those houses, they might throw out a couple of taps for affordable housing, but I think what you can expect is hundreds of prime view lot second homes all over the mesas that are closer to Aspen homes than they are to Paonia homes, with many bathrooms and swimming pools and all kinds of stuff that are going to really, really throw a load on this town system. And like so many things, the town really is putting the cart before the horse. You should clean up what you got before you move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. Anyone else? Yeah, Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I have to say, I haven't really been following this issue all that much. But I do know that the Telluride, I think it's called the Telluride Institute. They gave a great talk on what I think is the best radio station in all of America, KVNF. They gave a great discussion maybe a year and a half ago about their projects, what they're doing with towns on the Western Slope. And I think it's called the Telluride Institute. I mean, they are from, I might have the institute name wrong, but they are from Telluride. And they have a deal where they partner up with the towns, and they have done projects already. They've got an established track record that we can look into. And their deal is very simple. The town gives them the land, they build the housing. and it's affordable housing. I think that's something we should look into. And then also just on my news feed, just 2 days ago, one of the founders of Airbnb has started a new startup, I believe in San Francisco, where they're doing affordable, what they call affordable housing out in California. But they're doing factory-built homes that I think we should look into, not to endorse their company, but it would be great to see somewhere in Delta County mimicking what the co-founder of Airbnb is doing with these manufactured homes. It'd be nice to see that occur. One thing I think that it's outside of the town jurisdictions of Paonia, but certainly the Upper Valley has more of a cosmopolitan outlook on the world than the Lower Valley. And one thing that is an absolute fact going on in America right now is we have a ton of international companies that want to buy land and manufacture here. A lot of that is because of some of the funding going on the federal level, but there's an enormous demand for land right now by international companies worldwide. And easy to find the statistics going on. And I think some of the land in the lower part of Delta County is prime land for that. And I would guess the Delta County commissioners, I would love to see Madam Mayor become a county commissioner, but I don't think that's going to happen realistically. I think that they're behind in times, quite frankly. And a little bit of motivation from Paonia to the county might assist with that. And there's a huge demand for some of that land that's sitting vacant right now for manufacturing purposes. That would bring in good jobs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yeah.
Christina Patterson, Price Road. 3 inches away from in town. So let's see. Shay made mention of that strategic planning session in July 2022. And I just wanted to remind also the board here and Trustee Knudsen that there might have been 8 dots for the get housing now, but there were 7 dots, maybe not as, uniformly put on there for that People's Park across from the library, to turn that into a public park there. So I guess that's still in the works. I mean, if we're looking at the strategic plan and what people wanted in there. So just reminding y'all. The only thing people have talked about a lot here. So what came up for me was that when this whole process started, the initial, the initial meetings were not open to the public, at all. And I questioned, everybody, hey, how do I get into those meetings? Why are they closed to the public? And it was just in no uncertain terms, those meetings were closed to the public. I asked Andrew and I asked people that were in those meetings, and I couldn't even find out when those meetings were held. So that is really a sticking point for me. That is absolutely ticks the box of non-transparent. I mean, I'm sure nothing nefarious went on, but it just doesn't feel good to not allow the public, who is paying for, I don't know what the percentage is, we put in 25,000, it was like a 70,000 study, but the public deserves to be in meetings that, that the public, that affects the public. So just that, and I think moving forward that maybe should not happen with consultants, hopefully. That things should just be open and transparent in those ways. Also, I was told I wasn't going to be able to get a listing of the businesses that took the survey. So I would really like the clarification of that. How many businesses were surveyed? How many were out of town? How many were in town? How many, the names of the businesses? Because honestly, if the businesses are not going to give their names effectively, I don't know. It sort of invalidates the whole study for me. I don't know why they wouldn't come out and say, I am a business owner
And this is like the nature of my work, and these are how many people I need. That seems reasonable. Let's see, because how is someone supposed to actually verify this information? I guess we're looking at 100+ houses in 3 years' time, when everything, when the water moratorium is lifted, when the zoning is taken care of, when the codes are taken care of. So that's what I got out of that study. Let's see. And then, yeah, it's sort of like in the timeline action. I guess the action plan needs to be a little more solidified for me, because I think it said start doing the ADUs before the codes and the zoning were taken care of. And that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, since I see no one else, then I'm going to close the public comment section. Do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I want to be clear that this is not a master plan, this is a housing needs assessment, and it's only a draft element of the master plan. And to be clear, Colorado Revised Statute 3123-206 for a master plan, it is the duty of the commission to make and adopt a master plan for the physical development of the municipality, including any areas outside its boundaries, subject to the approval of the governmental body having jurisdiction thereof. That the commission's judgment bear relation to the planning of the municipality. This further goes on to give the process for which a master plan must be adopted. This is not what we're doing tonight. We're looking at a housing needs assessment that will have a housing element that will go into a master plan. And once that's ready, that master plan, even though the master plan process started well before a housing needs assessment, it's not ready yet. There isn't a working draft that's ready for public discussion and public input and public scrutiny as well. And this element will go into that master plan for a rough draft that's going to go through this process. And to be clear, the Planning Commission doesn't get its authority by statute. The town gets authority to create a Planning Commission by statute. I think that's really important to know that your powers and authority right now as the Planning Commission are given to you as a delegation of authority from the Board of Trustees. I think that should be clarified as well.
All right. Andrew and Shay, do you have anything that you would like to say in response to public comment?
A couple items that might just be helpful to know. There's a really interesting example I find in I can't tell you exactly what section it is right now. There's so many examples, but Buena Vista recently created a tap prioritization document or a water allocation. I forget exactly what it's called. There's a link in there and I can get you to the page eventually. But it's really fascinating. It's kind of the first of its kind as far as I know in the state, and it addresses some of the comments here of can we allocate taps specifically to affordable housing projects? And that would be a really good example to look at as you guys think through the tap moratorium and how you potentially want to allocate those. And it takes percentages of water available and says, we're putting a good hunk in multifamily or affordable. So that's a really kind of cool example to look at. The other item that one of the gentlemen talked about with the Telluride, it's the Telluride Foundation, and that's listed as an example in there as well. They are kind of have spun off, and what they're doing is called rural homes now. And they have a couple of different models, one in Norwood where they got the land from the town, I believe, or the school district, another model in Ridgeway where they purchased land, but they do have a good model and it's with factory built housing. So that is an example in there that is, a really good source to look at in our area. A couple of clarifications if it's helpful. We as the consultants typically as kind of best practice hold task force meetings that are not widely publicized to the public and open to the public, partially because it's really difficult to manage, as you guys know. Having different people show up in the middle of a process with a task force that has been educated from the start till the end to participate, and then having someone show up can really derail a meeting and not allow that to be productive and for us to be efficient with your funds and try to do as best of a job we can. We really opened a lot of other stuff up to the public, as I mentioned in the overview, where we tried to reach out to people who weren't even coming to us. We tried to leave a link open for constant communication. We published the notes for every single meeting on the board. So yes, those task force meetings were not just widely publicized, as open to the public, and that is part of our preference as a consultant team in order to try to do a really good job for you guys and keep efficient and on time. The business survey, another item that's in our experience, we get a lot better data when we tell the businesses that it is a private entry and that their information will not be published. So that is our choice as a consultant, to do it that way so we get as good of information as we can to help you guys get a good document. I'm not sure that knowing exactly who filled it out or what would be super helpful, except maybe knowing maybe who's missing. But Andrew and I personally walked around town handing out flyers, trying to get everybody to participate. We sent out email lists. We sent out emails to people who had emails lists. So we really did invite everyone to fill out that survey. And that just informs some of the numbers that we come up with. So sure, if you're making a decision, specific to the numbers and the needs, that is what relates to those business survey examples. Otherwise, yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. And then just one small clarification. The plan called for 100 houses in 5 years, not in 3. And that is not all in town. That's kind of saying the Payoneer region, which is defined in that report. So hopefully those clarifications help.
Okay. All right. Questions for Shay and Andrew from the board or from the commission?
Yeah, excuse me.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, fine.
I'm wondering what this action plan, I see it's gonna be going to the board. I'm disappointed Stefan's stepping out. As administrator, it would be nice if he could maybe help facilitate some of this. But so I'm not clear, the action plan goes to the board. There are specific steps that are being, or like amending codes that are being discussed here, and I would like to see the planning commission kept a little bit more in the information loop. I was reviewing planning, I'm new on the planning commission, and I went through the last 6 months of planning commission agendas and minutes, and there's been no outreach to the planning commission, just to let them know what's going on. It's really hard to have something just kind of dumped before you. Without that, I think as a courtesy, it would just be nice to include the planning commission in the information. Even if they're not being asked to weigh in at the time, it's an important body that's going to be important for the comprehensive plan. And I'd like to see it something as other than a rubber stamping body. So that being said, it seems like, I guess I don't understand either in this action plan. It's talking about the ADUs, but you can't make an ordinance allowing ADUs without changing the land use code, because that is all in our current land use code. So they're part of the same. And I think it's really timely right now, because we're having this comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is the land use code. It informs a land use code. So it's really timely to talk about ADUs concurrent with that, but I don't see how ADUs can go before land use code. And I guess I want to give you one example. I don't know if you're aware of this, but several years ago, I think it was in 2016, the businesses were allowed to have living units downtown in the commercial district. And I think the planning commission that heard it said it was to sustain the traditional mom and pop use of the building where mom and pop could live in the building, you know, their employees could live in the building. But that was passed. But the thing is, it was just passed in the form of a chart. So there's business use as part of it, our business use, our residential secondary to living unit secondary to business use, and which was mom and pop, and residence as part of it, business use, which seems to be more of a business, but nobody was able to figure out what that meant. And at the time I was on the board and I voted no, because I said, this needs to be clear what we're doing. You know, are we gonna allow entrances off the street? Like how many square feet are we talking about? But what I've seen, it's something that has not been able to be tracked and regulated, and now we're just seeing VRBOs and apartments, just money-making ventures going in. And I thought at that time it was more to be sustaining businesses. And that's not what happened, because we didn't clarify it enough as a board. There was no appetite to clarify it. I was told, we'll deal with the problems as they come. Well, the problems have come and the problems are still here, and we've not been able to deal with it. So that's like with ADUs. I think we need to be very, very clear, because you're gonna get a lot of speculation. I mean, ADUs, people, you know, struggle to make money here. Homeowners are not rich. There are a lot of, and I appreciate you kind of pointing out the financial strain that homeowners actually do feel. But people try to figure out any way they can make money to be able to keep themselves on their property. And, you know, that's why VRBO is so popular. You don't have to live with someone there all the time. And, you know, if people can keep someone out of their 3-bedroom house because they don't want to share a bathroom with them, and they can put a small unit on their property instead. But is that really what we want to see? I mean, that's not really housing. So there are like all these little factors that I think it would be nice to have a discussion, like an informal discussion about this, what we might see here with these different scenarios. And I don't know how, I know you're toward the end of your contract, so I don't know how the planning commission might further these discussions with maybe looking at some of the issues that might arise with some of the things are being, so we know how to head them off or plan for it, let's say.
Do you have any specific questions for the applicant?
Yes. Well, yeah, I'd like to see, I think what I was seeing here in your survey was the questions that you asked the businesses, because you did fill them out, but I really would like to see the businesses that were actually surveyed. And I know in your contract, it does say all that information is property of the town. So as a member of the planning commission, I mean, I don't know, you might not want to divulge it publicly, but I'd just be curious to see. So that's a very specific question there.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay,
Not right now.
any other questions? Do you have any?
Well, okay, my question was, can we be kept in the loop? I mean, monthly,
Okay,
what's
well,
going on or whatever.
Okay.
They're sending all this information to the board, and I want to make sure that the planning commission is taken
Okay.
seriously.
So that would be a future.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do you have questions, Lynn?
I don't have a question, I just have a quick comment. Is that okay? As I read it through, I didn't see it as a definitive direction. I saw it as a roadmap that we can use in order to have these kind of discussions. And I did appreciate that in many parts of it, it was like who would be involved in these discussions. Planning commission was sometimes it was just the town trustees. But my feeling is if this is a roadmap to use, and I think there's so much good information in it, that we can have some really intelligent discussions using that information around how to proceed and looking at ordinance and land use changes. So that's just my comment.
Yes. Sure.
I didn't quite feel like there were specific questions,
Right,
but
yeah.
kind of in there, a little bit of questions.
Knudsen has his hand up.
Yes, I was gonna get to Dave next. Let's see if Dave has any questions, and then maybe you can address that.
I don't have specific questions. I want to add comments. So is this the time for that or not?
Well, I was gonna say, if we have questions, let's get Shay and Andrew to answer the questions, and then we're gonna go into board discussion after
Okay.
that. So I do have a specific question, and that is, which would you recommend? So as you are writing the ordinances, would you recommend that the code changes be done prior to the ordinance, or that the ordinance point to code changes and that you then change the code to comply with the ordinance? Cart before the horse before the, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna start clean instead of picking an option, if that's okay. So this plan is what Lynn was saying. It's really a roadmap. So it's trying to get you guys a lot of good information to have informed discussions. So an example, since we've been talking about the short-term rentals and ADUs, it's trying to give you, here's some best practices, here's some ideas, here's other examples, here's generally the steps you would take to do this. It's not saying how you're going to do it, it's not saying who approves what, but that in order to do something like this, you guys would then go through your own process to amend the code. So you would follow the town's required procedures. Sometimes that can include deciding to have extra open public meetings or workshops or events. Sometimes that includes staff writing an ordinance and bringing it to the planning commission, and then the planning commission making a recommendation to go to the board, and the board making the final decision, and that going into effect when your code says so, typically 30 days after it's adopted. So it would go through your typical process, but the plan is exactly a roadmap to try to really help inform better discussions around this, because for better or for worse, we kind of get out of those conversations. It's the stuff that you guys then have to really work out the details of. How do you want to regulate short-term rentals? What does that look like? How do you want to charge tax? How do you want to do all that? And that's going to be for you guys to decide. So does that answer your question in a roundabout way? Okay. And that, so it will, our recommended edits for short-term rentals, ADUs, small lot sizes, and the expedited process will just be a first draft for you guys to start with. The idea is then your staff doesn't have to spend a bunch of time researching, going through our data. We've heard a lot during this process, so hopefully that will be a really good first draft to start the conversation with, whether you decide for that to be a planning commission meeting or if you want to do something different than that. The plan does not update your land use code. There is a specific process that is required by the town to do an ordinance in order to amend your land use code. So that this plan does not do that. And that again will be for you guys to kind of sort out as you go, but hopefully our first draft will be helpful. So.
Thank you. Yes.
So I don't want to get too nitpicky or specific here. There was actually one chart that was missing a cell and it said information not available. And I thought it was interesting because I was wondering if you just left it out, and I put tabs on things, but I guess I can't find that one. But I was a little curious about how you compiled the data. I mean, I understand because some homeowners, you know, have paid off their homes, so it's not going to cost them as much to live there. And so it says, I mean, you were saying that renters, there's a bigger cost burden to living in a house and paying it to renters than to homeowners. But what is calculated into a homeowner's cost burden? I mean, renters don't pay the property taxes, they don't pay for the maintenance, they don't pay for the repairs, they don't pay fees like building fees, permit fees, you know, for repairs. So when you say it costs less to be a homeowner, are you just looking at like the monthly mortgage rate, or are you looking at like all the compiled costs that it costs to own a home?
Andrew Coburn.
Yeah, thank you.
So
if I'm following the question and where you are in the document. So cost burden is just a function of housing expenses relative to household income. So a household is considered cost burden if their total housing payment is greater than 30% of their gross household income, so before taxes. And on the rental side of the equation, generally speaking, what goes into that is your rent payment and your utilities, excluding things like your cell phone. That's not considered a utility, so that would be gas and electric service. And that could also include trash, water, and sewer if that is actually paid for by the tenant and not already captured by the monthly rent.
Okay, so that's for rentals, they do the rent plus utilities, and for homeowners, what's the cost factored from?
So on the for sale side, for homeowners, it gets calculated in different ways. So if you're looking at the chart that shows like the maximum affordable sale price, that was calculated as an interest rate of 7% on a 30-year fixed loan with 5% down, with 20% of the payment going towards taxes, insurance, and any other fees like HOA dues, which aren't common here, but sort of a standard figure of 20%.
Okay, but property maintenance, it's not included in the cost of owning a home? I mean, because that's what's transferred in rent is the owner transfers the cost of maintaining the property to, they do the work, but they charge it through the rent basically. So
Correct.
homeowners do have to pay for that if they're living in the house themselves.
Yes.
There's an amazing amount of maintenance costs.
Yep, that would be captured in the 20%.
Okay, so that's captured in 20%. Okay.
It's a general guideline. It's a rough way of doing it, right? Everyone's terms are different. The quality of the house is different, so it'd be really hard to build one chart that would cover all of those variables. So we try to standardize it in a report like this to give you a sense of the scale of the affordable.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. All right. Any more questions? If there are not, I'm going to close the hearing and then the board will discuss. Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing. And now it's up to the board. We're just going to discuss the issue whether or not we are going to recommend the study or recommend the housing needs assessment for adoption by the board, adoption with edits, denial, or just pass it on.
Dave had a comment I'd like to
Okay, yeah, Dave.
hear that.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Having been involved in this process since the very beginning, first of all, I was very pleased that we ended up getting a local consultant who is a well-regarded professional to be able to work on this, because the guidance that I've seen coming through this process from these two have been very diligent, very professional, and well thought out. So there's been a number of meetings that they've conducted. I think the open house that they conducted was one of the most impressive because they had workstations. And what was a real pleasant surprise during that open house was to see how many citizens came in and took the handouts and sat down at a table and studied the handouts before they did their votes. Now, I want to be clear, this is not the survey that was referred to earlier about housing being first and then something else was close second. This was the one that was conducted, and the packet that we have right now shows the results of that. People really studied a lot before they came in that, and I really appreciated the input that we had from that. And even all the written comments from everyone in the community that came into that session were also included in the packet. So I just wanted to compliment our planners and our consultants on a job well done. Those are the only comments I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right. So we have a recommendation to make. Yes. Ms. Watson.
I would just like to point out, we're not asking the board to adopt anything. Here it says consideration of approval of the recommendation to the board to accept the housing needs assessment and action plan.
And it should be adopted, not accepted.
Stefan said we're not adopting it. You kind of made it clear at the beginning that this is not an adoption, it's an accepting it to put it into the.
No, it should be adoption, not acceptance. And it's, all we're doing is making a recommendation to the board. We're not going to adopt it as the planning commission.
Yeah, but is the board adopting it? Which
Yes,
is,
the
as,
board will adopt it and then it will become part of the master plan.
no, it's gonna be used as a component, yeah.
Right.
But he said it was gonna be, he didn't say adopt, he said they would approve it for use in the master plan.
But it's.
I mean,
still
I don't know if
adopted.
you heard, he explained this process in the beginning and, you know, it's adopt is kind of a final word and I'm a little uncomfortable with it.
Well,
Because it could be revised still.
and it still will be
Nothing's-
revised. As time goes by, it does get revised. I mean,
Nothing's, it's not like, it's kind of, it's still a little bit of a living document, I understand. It's an,
Yes,
aspirational.
even being adopted, it still can be revised. And will be revised because it is a living document. It should be revised as a living document,
Okay,
as should the comprehensive plan. When it comes to the board and gets adopted, it should be looked at a minimum every 5 years.
okay, well, I would, like to, recommend consideration and approval of this housing needs
Are
assessment.
you making a formal motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
let me see, okay, I'm looking at this here. Okay, I'd like to recommend, to the Board of
Can
Trustees.
you make it as a motion, please?
Yes,
Thank
I'm
you.
making a motion
Thank you.
to recommend to the Board of Trustees to accept a housing needs assessment and action plan. To accept this housing needs assessment and action plan. To be, considered as part of the body of comprehensive plan, master plan.
Okay. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Dave, did Dave disappear on us?
Just go back in.
Oh. All right, so we have a motion and a second to. Can you,
To refer, okay,
Okay.
let me say, to refer.
let's see what
do it?
Ruben has for the motion.
Watson recommends motion up to the board of trustees to accept the housing needs assessment plan to be considered as part of the body of the master plan.
That work? Yes, okay. Did you hear that, Dave? All right.
Yes, I did. I apologize. I'm using an iPad for this and I hit the leave button instead of the mute button. So thank, I want to thank Ruben for being so diligent and seeing that I was trying to get back in. And I apologize for that delay.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right. Since we have accomplished our need for tonight, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you, Shay. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone who came and made comments. Thank you very much. And to those of you who participated in the process, thank you very much. Appreciated.
Big thanks to Andrew and Shay.
Thanks, Dave.